There are 7 steps and all of them are critical.
Okay.
So the reason why I call it Triumph, other than the fact that Triumph is a cool word and a cool name, and all business leaders want to triumph, the reason why I call it Triumph is because Triumph is 7 letters, and every letter in Triumph stands for one of the steps. And as I said, every one of them is necessary. So the first step is T, think and identify the root of the challenge. And this is the first step, because this is, if you don't get that right, this is critical. If you don't get that right, none of the other things will work out. And a lot of the time, companies rush into the execution without really digging deep into.
Welcome back to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. Have you ever wondered how the latest in generative AI can revolutionize your business? Well, today we dive deep with Talila Millman, a visionary CTO who's spearheading innovation in B2B startups and transforming industries with cutting-edge strategies. Stay tuned to discover the pivotal moments that shaped her journey and how her Triumph framework can elevate your organization to the next level. Let's get started.
Thank you, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you. So I think we'll just jump right in. So, throughout your career, you've been a CTO and a divisional CTO at huge corporations like Stanley Black & Decker and Harris. Now you're working with B2B startups. So you've been at the forefront of like digital transformation. So as you reflect on that journey, what was the pivotal moment that propelled you towards becoming a catalyst for growth and innovation?
In everything that I did, Mike, I always wanted to make an impact. I always wanted to make things bigger, better, both for the companies, but more so for the customers that I work with. And that's where it all came from. I never thought about being a growth catalyst. I thought about how I could make customers' life better. And that's what motivated everything.
Perfect. So as you look ahead, how do you think the future of technology is going to shape our approach to solving some of our most pressing problems?
So we live in the time of generative AI, and I think this is going to change our lives altogether. I think for companies, it's going to be a mixed bag. Some companies are going to grow and become better, and some companies may need to choose a completely different strategic direction or perish. This is like what we had at the beginning of the internet. If you think about what about the beginning of the internet, the way that it worked was that internet completely changed the landscape. So consider travel agency business, for instance. When the internet became widespread, many traditional travel agencies struggled because people started doing their trips online through websites like Expedia, Travelocity, Booking. The internet made it simple for people to do everything themselves, and all these agencies couldn't compete. So most of them had to either pivot or close down. And that was one kind of business. Another kind of business, for instance, think about lawn care companies. They're doing the same things that they did in the last decades. Nothing much changed for them other than the fact that they became more productive. My lawn care company, they do all their billings through the internet. They send all their receipts through the internet, all the reservations through the internet. And they even have a service where they come, they take a few pictures of their backyard, and then they send you a complete plan on how they can change your complete landscape, all through internet and digital technology. So they became more productive and they can offer more services, but their core business did not change. And then there is the other type of company, right? Companies, businesses that were born through the internet. Think about web designers, think about SEOs. These are businesses that did not exist before. And I think, so this is the internet. And we can talk about it because we know what happened. With generative AI, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but we know that just like the internet, it's going to be a mixed bag. Some companies are going to be put out of business, and some companies will be more productive and will be able to generate entirely new opportunities that didn't exist before. I think the key for companies is to figure out what and how they can adapt or leverage these changes to survive and thrive in the new era shaped by AI.
You know, you make some great points there. Like my own brother, for years, he was an executive and then a partner at a travel agency, and he went through that exact thing when the internet, when people started having like Expedia and whatnot. He went through that exact thing and had to pivot. But my most recent experience with how like what you would call like, non-technical businesses using technology to better themselves is we live here in Las Vegas, and so of course like our backyard is mostly rocks. And so one of the things I figured out right away was going out and cleaning up after my dogs was a pain. Like it was so hard to
Wow.
handle. And so my wife found this service that would come here on a weekly basis, and they charge very little, and clean up. But the problem that we had with the first service, because now we're on our second one, is that there's just no communication. And so recently, she switched about a month ago to another company, and the communication has been amazing. Like we get a text message, we're 10 minutes away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the other day I actually asked the guy, like, how do you do this? Like, you guys, your service is great. And he said, yeah, we have like a web page that we have our dispatch list. And when we're done with a client, we hit done. It now knows we're going to the next client. So it sends that client a text saying, hey, they're on their way and they're going to be there in X minutes. And I said, it's been great because you show up every time they say you're supposed to show up, you communicate, and you're using technology in a real low tech business to increase your customer service. I think that's really a cool thing. So I heard through the research that I did that you've written a book. Okay, the book's called The Triumph Framework: 7 Steps to Leading Organizational Transformation. So what do you think is one of the key steps that's most critical for successful transformation?
There are 7 steps, and all of them are critical.
Okay.
So the reason why I call it Triumph, other than the fact that Triumph is a cool word and a cool name, and all business leaders want to triumph, the reason why I call it Triumph is because Triumph is 7 letters, and every letter in Triumph stands for one of the steps. And as I said, every one of them is necessary. So the first step is T, think and identify the root of the challenge. And this is the first step, because this is, if you don't get that right, this is critical. If you don't get that right, none of the other things will work out. And a lot of the time, companies rush into the execution without really digging deep into this thinking and identifying the root cause. I'll give you an example. I was brought in one of the corporates that I served. I was brought in as a VP of engineering of a big organization to improve the way the group worked. They told me that the engineering organization is awful. They have problems with execution. They're late. They have quality issues. Customers are unhappy. Engineering was blamed for every single thing that was wrong with this organization.
Yeah.
And of course, right? It's always engineering fault. But when I came and I did the root cause analysis, when I talked with people, I realized that yes, there were a lot of problems with engineering. But really, the basic root cause with the way that they acquired new business. They had salespeople that would go and talk with customers and promise them things that engineering could not deliver in the time frame that was promised. And so engineering would say, well, we cannot do that unless you take out something else. And of course, nobody wanted to take something else. And it was like, well, we can finish testing by this date, but then it could take us time to test. And okay, so don't do any testing. And so the bottom line was that they were still late, and the quality was really bad, and customer was upset. And in that business, when you didn't deliver well, the quality sucked, you also had to pay penalties. So it was really bad. It really brought the organization down. So but the root cause, again, was not with engineering. So just going and fixing engineering would not have worked. We would have been at the same place. That's why finding the real root cause is so critical. And I know it sounds obvious and it sounds just common sense, but people don't do it most of the time. So the first step is to think and identify the root cause. Then recognize the stakeholders. And this is really important. You know, some people call it office politics, but really it's about forming alliances with people that make a difference. You need to identify all the parties that are impacted, and then you need to align them with what you want to do. They have to be part of the solution, because if they're not going to be part of the solution, they're going to go against it, and you don't want it. You want at least 80% of the stakeholders to be part of what you're doing. The next stage is ideate a plan. And I'm saying ideate. I'm not saying create a plan, because I believe in agile. Mike, I know that you've been a CTO and you know the importance of agile, but sometimes when people think about transformation, they have this long-winded plan, and then it's like anything. If you don't, you have to start, you have to have the strategy, you have to have the idea, but then you have to be willing to change it. So you need to ideate a plan, you need to have the strategy, and you take it from there. Use unwavering communication. And I'm saying unwavering communication because you have to communicate all the time, especially with bigger organizations. But to be honest, even with scale-ups, I find that I've been to smaller companies that you think communication would not be an issue, right? Because they're so small and they can just talk to each other. And employees still don't understand really what is expected of them. So the purpose of the communication plan is to create motivation, drive, and inform the employees. And you have to constantly do that in order to be successful. And you have to tailor your message to what the employees are, to the employees that you're talking about, and create a expectation. M is mobilize grassroots support. And this is one of the most foundation elements of Triumph. This is not a top-down approach. This is not, the book is intended for leaders, but this is not just about leaders. This is about making employees partners and making sure that the employees will participate both in the solution and in the implementation, listening to them, working with them. This is like a 360-degree kind of transformation. Everybody has to be part of it. P is put the plan into action, and then H is hone your plan as you go, because you want to monitor progress and be prepared to refine your strategy, because we know that in real life, things never go according to the plan, right? So you start with a certain plan and then you continuously work it out. I have a real cool example about this from a transformation that I did. This was about, I was working at a company as a CTO and general manager, and we were doing financially, we were doing so well. We were really doing well. But my concern was there were new trends coming into the market, into our industry. My concern was that if we continued the same route, we would become irrelevant within 5 or 7 years, and we will become legacy irrelevant, and we will be just, we will have to close down sooner or later. And so I was looking for a way to go into new products and new markets. So I went through several stages. The first stage, I thought, well, maybe it's our technology. And we completely did an overhaul of our technology. We came up with a design that was leading edge. Wonderful design. We were able to reduce our costs by 10x for the system. And this didn't do anything for us. So Plan A did not work. Then the next stage was, okay, we need to innovate. We need to come up with new products, new markets. That's when I remember I talked about having employees as partners. So I declared an innovation week and I looked for ideas from everyone in the company, everyone. I said, we're going to look at what our future is going to be. We're creating the long-term view. I want to hear what everybody has to say. And you would think that with an engineering problem, everybody would jump on the chance to innovate. Didn't happen. But enough people stepped up and came up with ideas, and we processed everything that came out, and we created an innovation roadmap. We took this innovation roadmap to market, to customers. And unbeknown to us, one of our biggest customers was working on their RFP, on their future vision, on what they saw as their future product. And they couldn't tell us legally, they couldn't tell us what were their what they were looking for in the RFP. We came to them 2 months before the RFP went out. But when the RFP came out, all of our ideas were there. So we were just in a great place to win this RFP. We competed with the titans of our industry, with Ericsson, Samsung, other companies, and we won. And this RFP alone was 25% increase in our revenue. And then that was not enough because I said, these are still the same customers and I'm afraid about where the industry is going. So we created an innovation council. And every week, the Innovation Council would meet and we would talk about what can we do, what are the trends. And then at some point, we talked with another customers. They were developing an application with another vendor. And I was thinking, why another vendor? What about us? We can do this. So I brought it to the Innovation Council and I had two. I had first one guy and then a second guy volunteered to work on this part-time, after hours. We created a demo, we took it to the customer, and the customer said, no, this is not what I'm looking for. You're not a great fit to develop this for us. And it was kind of devastating, but we were sitting there and thinking, why did they say that? And then we realized that what we developed was really not for them. It was for a completely new market that we never worked in, the enterprise market. And so we took it to the enterprise market. We took it to customers. We had salespeople that had connection. They looked at this and they were like, yes, this is what we're looking for. And they actually ordered before we even had the product out. So we use these funds to basically fund the development. So this is a way to run your plan, right? You start with one action and you completely change based on what's happening in the market.
So based on our discussion we had earlier, I understand that you work with as an advisor and executive coach with like CEOs and C-suites. Tell me about that.
So I usually come when things are wrong. When things don't go the way I actually work in two capacities now. One is I work as a fractional CTO, mostly in the startup ecosystem. My role typically mirrors that of an in-house CTO. It involves collaborating closely with the CEO, the executive leadership team, and the product development team. And I provide strategic technology leadership, fostering innovation, ensuring development and delivery of exceptional products that align with user needs. And then with scale-ups and mid-market company and even bigger companies, they often have an existing CTO, and my contribution centers around addressing specific challenges like accelerating time to market, increasing predictability, improving quality, improving productivity, providing all kinds of solutions that they're struggling with.
Yeah, see, I do something similar. I work with tech executives and I run them through a program that I call the Decentralized A team. And essentially I advocate for centralized management. So my advocacy is, don't you hired people for roles, especially technology people. I think this is really important. But CEOs have this problem too, because you'll see what I mean in a second. But, as a CTO, I used to have a person who was my help desk administrator. I had two network engineers. I had a database administrator. I had a team of developers. They all had their job. And if I had sat there and told them what to do, how to do their job, etc., well, then I'd be the one running everything. And that's not why I hired all of those people. I hired them for their expertise. So I strongly believed in letting them, and this is where my decentralized A-team system comes from, is my own experience. I strongly believe in just letting them do their job. It's that tired old analogy of, right, people on the, you have the right people on the bus, but do you have them in the right seat? That's the key. I don't want to be the one who tells the DBA how to optimize the database, and I don't want to be the one who, like, I can remember having developers come to me and say, well, you told me to write this function. How do you think I should write it? Well, you should write it in a way that it works and it's efficient. I'm not going to tell you step by step, because if we both sat down at the same time to do the same task, we'd come up with the same answer, but in a different way. So go do it your way. As long as it's effective, we're good. So, I relate to a lot of things you said. I mean, even when you were talking about the Triumph framework, I've lived that whole it's all engineering's fault issue. And I mean, even down to like bosses promising things that would take 4 or 5 weeks to do, promising it by tomorrow. And then you get yelled at because it wasn't done by tomorrow. And it'd be like saying, I want you to leave Las Vegas right now, and I want you to walk to New York City, and you'd better be there by tomorrow morning. There's no way it's possible. It can't happen. I could run and it wouldn't happen, So I also understand that you work as or maybe you have worked as a fractional CTO. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
yes.
another thing we have in common.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. I just want to say before we go to the fraction CTO that I saw what you said about delegation. Basically, you talked about delegation, the A-team,
Yes.
the concept of delegation, and it resonates with me so much because I see it mostly scale-ups, founders that are used to doing everything in their company, and all of a sudden they need to cede control and trust their people. And for some people, it's so hard learning how to delegate. I always say, when you delegate, you empower your people, you help them grow, but you also can grow yourself, because as a CEO, your role is not to write the code, is to market your company, find the strategic direction, find the investors. This is the right delegation does well for the people because they can grow and develop, but it also does well for the leader because it lets him grow, him or her, that lets them grow, do what they need to do, and they can focus on the things that are really important. Instead of holding your team's hands, give them wings. They will grow, and you will be less burned out.
Yeah, your comment about startup CEOs who wanted to do it all kind of inspires me to share a little story that I have about where, like, the initial kernel in my head for decentralized A-team. My youngest son used to play soccer, and he was a very good soccer player. And so about his second or third year playing soccer, he was chosen for the all-star team. And of course, as is typical with little kids, there's like a couple of kids from every team, and they're all the best kids from that team. And so it's kind of comical to watch them when they play their first game, because they're all used to being the ones that their team rides to victory. And they're not understanding, why am I supposed to pass to that guy? It doesn't make any sense. So I remember, they won the game, and, my son's telling me, oh, coach told us we need to pass more. We need to work more as a team. We need to do this. And I remember having the conversation with him about, well, son, you're used to being the kid that everyone passes to, but now you have to be the kid that passes away sometimes. And that's part of, being a team is that everybody, you play, center forward. You shouldn't be on the left and right side of the field. You got to be in your position. And then I just remember after conversation, there was like a light bulb, and I'm like, yeah, just like my team, every one of them has a role. And as long as they're all in their positions and they're playing their role correctly, things work really well. It's when I get in the way that things don't work so well. So, I mean, and honestly, that thinking has carried over, and we kind of can transition into your fractional CTO work, because that's carried me through the fractional CTO stuff, because you get a client hiring you because, for one, they can't necessarily afford a CTO's full-time salary. Maybe they don't need a full-time CTO, but you have to kind of integrate and be part of their team. But at the same time, like, I don't know how to put it, not insult what direction they're going in. You have to really walk a fine line. So tell me about your experience with that. I mean, how do you help companies understand the value of their technology? Because normally I think most CEOs undervalue technology.
I guess I've been very lucky to work with CEOs as an advisor. I would say as an advisor, I was very lucky to work with CEOs that do understand the value of technology. And that's why they bring me along, either because they need help. I've worked both with founders, as fractional CTO especially, I worked with founders that didn't have the technical knowledge and needed to bring me along to help them navigate the technology part of the startup. Let me give you an example. I was brought in to a startup completely at the beginning. The founder was not technical. He was in the stage where he was trying to decide to take an outsourcing team to do his technology work. And he just, again, brilliant guy. I want to emphasize that he's a brilliant guy. It's not that there was anything wrong with his thinking. He just didn't work in this before and was not aware of some of the stumbling blocks and some of the things that he need to ask. So for instance, I asked him, okay, can I see the requirements? He was like, no, this is a startup. I'm not going to document everything. I just worked for 6 months with all these vendors and they know what I'm looking for. And then I'm talking with the vendors and they miss some of the most basic requirements that he told me about. And even though you're a startup, you need to document at least the basics so people will know and remember. So that was one example. The other thing was the data that this startup deals with is extremely sensitive data. So my first question was, what about cybersecurity best practices? Is that something that you talked about with the vendors? And he didn't. And when some of these vendors, I had a questionnaire, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? Will you think about this? And no, they didn't think about this. They didn't include it in the proposal that they had. And once I brought it up, they had to add it on to the proposal. So just by looking at this, I could offer some advice that really changed the trajectory of how he was selecting the outsourcing companies, how he was working with, and so forth. And this is just based on my experience being in this field and doing this type of things for more than 25 years.
So I really like asking at least one question during an interview that maybe you wouldn't expect. So tell me, do you have any unique or quirky habits that you think has contributed to your success as a leader and innovator?
Well, so these are my habits, why would I even think that they're quirky or weird, right? I just think that's the way of doing things. I guess one of the things that I kept in touch with some of the people that worked for me. I had amazing people working for me throughout the years, and I recently got connected again through LinkedIn with the person that used to work for me. And one of the things that he told me, he said, he left that company where we worked together as well. He's now working elsewhere. And he said, and it really struck me. He said, after you left, things really changed. And I said, how did they change? And he said, well, you were always close to the engineering team because remember, I started as the engineering leader, but then I branched off and I became a more general manager. And things really changed. You were always close to the engineering team. So we always had a voice with you. But after you left, nobody listened to us. Nobody heard what we had to say. And I didn't think it was quirky. I still don't think it's quirky. I think that's the way leaders should act. Leaders should always listen to the people that they work with. They should always treat them as partners, and they should always be open to feedback. But apparently, I guess other people don't do that. So maybe this is quirky. I firmly believe this is something that contributed to my success.
Oh, I would agree with you. And I mean, I think the only reason someone would classify that as quirky is something that you hit right upon, which is that a lot of leaders don't listen. I mean, I can tell you, like, I had a CEO for probably 8 years that I worked under, and we got to a point where the technology was shifting and .NET was coming out. It was a big deal. And he kept saying to me, we need more backup. You've always backed up the coding team if necessary. And I did that not because I had to, but because I would take a teeny tiny piece of a project, and I'm talking maybe like 3 functions that needed to be written, just so I could keep my skills sharp. And I'm actually glad I did that. And he'd say, well, now we're going to move into .NET. We need people who can do that. Well, he clearly never listened to the many, many conversations we had in which I talked about understanding and writing .NET code. That's like, and that's just a minor example. You can imagine, like, if you're talking about budgeting or a strategy that you're going to implement, if they're not listening, later there's going to be pushback. And it's why, one of the things I advocate with my clients is clear, concise communication, especially with non-technical people. Ditch the jargon. Sorry. I think the jargon makes you hard to understand to non-technical people. And too many people it just goes over their head. They miss that. So, I think that's the only reason why it's quirky, is because you're doing something, or you did something that others didn't do. And that person that you spoke to basically told you that you were always, supportive of the engineering team. And when you were gone, that went away with you. And that's, it's kind of sad if you ask me. I think you're right. I mean, all leaders need to learn to listen to their team better. Agreed?
Totally
Yeah.
agree. I think it's important to be open and listen to your people. That's the first thing, right? You need to listen to your customers, and you need to listen to the market. And when we talk about listening to the market, I guess these days, the market into industry trends. And I guess today, the biggest disruptor in the market is Gen AI. We talked about my book, Triumph, the Triumph Framework, 7 Steps to Leading Organizational Transformation. When I talked about this book with CEOs, with leaders, this book is a general purpose book on how to lead change, how to drive a business transformation. And I think now in this day and age of so many disruptors, this is more important than ever. One of the things that people ask me, well, how does this apply to Gen AI? What do I do now? I know that this is a disruptive. What do I need to do? So listening to the market, listening to the customers, as the book launches, I'm creating with it an ebook and possibly also a notebook kind of companion workbook about how to triumph with Gen AI. And the idea is Triumph is the overall framework. And then for Gen AI, there may be specific things that you need to do, and you can create a notebook. You use this as a notebook where you write all your thoughts, you do all your planning and thinking, and you will share it with your peers, with the other stakeholders, and you will drive the Gen AI transformation. So I provide a systematic approach to incorporating Gen AI into your business.
When is the book being released?
I don't have an exact date yet, but I think that by the time this podcast will be out, mid-May, it will already be after launch.
Excellent. I strongly suggest people go look for it, because I mean, I find your energy really infectious. You have a way of putting things that it just keeps me, paying attention. And I can only imagine, I mean, if that comes across in your book, it's going to be an excellent read for leaders, and especially tech leaders. So, but with that said, let people know how they can connect with you.
They can connect with me through my website, www.talilamillman.com. And if they want more news about the book, I have a website, a webpage for the book as well, www.thetriumphframework.com. And they can go there, sign up for my newsletter. They will get news about the book. And also, I will have special deals for launch week.
Well, anyone looking for an edge, in their technology leadership should definitely check out your book. I think they're going to find things in there that maybe they've thought of, but haven't necessarily thought of in a way that you present it. I know during this interview, you've said a few things that were not new to me, but you have a different perspective, and I really like that. Especially, I mean, we've both kind of been in the technology field for about the same amount of time, and so we've seen some of the same things come and go, and I think that's kind of what makes people like us more valuable to the people that are coming out now, is that we've seen things come out and then they just fail for whatever reason, and later on it becomes obvious why they fail. So, but thanks so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. You've been an excellent guest.
Oh, thank you, Mike. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Same here, same here. But thank you everybody for being here to see another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. As I mentioned at the beginning, the show releases every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and you can catch it on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Have a great week, and I hope to see you back here next week.